Hi everyone, this is Jim. I wanted to show you a game I played last night at my local chess club. This game was played at a slow time control. It was an hour and a half for each side with a 5-second delay. So a little faster. I mean, the normal time control at our club is 2 hours for the game. So a little faster than the normal time control, but still basically a slow game. Plenty of time to think about the moves. And this game turned into a real tactical workout, so I thought it would be interesting to look at. So in this game, let's see, my rating for this game is 1748, and my opponent's rating is 1800. And so just a note about the ratings. I actually had a really bad start to this year. I lost 5 games in a row, and then since then I've had a number of draws and a couple more losses. So my rating has really suffered. So I'm down in Class B territory here. Haven't been this. My rating hasn't been this low in 5 or 6 years, I think. And my opponent's rating at 1800. Well, my opponent is an older gentleman, and when you see an older player with a even rating like that, something that's ends in 2 zeros, 1800, 1700, 1600, something like that, they're often sitting on their rating floor, and that's what happened in this case. So you get a floor for your rating every time your rating jumps over another 100 point boundary. So, for example, my rating floor is at 1700 because I had a rating at one time above 1900, and so that gave me a rating floor of 1700. So my opponent with a rating floor of 1800, what that means is at one time he had a rating of over 2000. So anyway, I just wanted to mention that these players can be very dangerous, the ones that are sitting on the rating floor, because at one time they had some really good skills, and those are still there. There's some clever tactical ability that doesn't seem to go away, and sometimes there's a deep knowledge of various book openings, various end games, things like that. I think what seems to go in older players is concentration. So if you can get them into a long game where you don't lose immediately, but keep the game going and keep it complicated, so you're exercising and taxing their brains, then that's probably what gives you the best chance. Try and keep it complicated and give them lots of challenges, and that's probably good advice in general. Okay, so let's get on to the game. I had the white pieces. I started off with e4. My opponent went d6. I went d4. That's a normal move when your opponent gives up or doesn't challenge the center. You put another pawn there. And then he goes knight f6. This is a very interesting kind of setup, and there's different ways that black can go. In this game, he goes with a Neo-Philidor setup with e5. But there's also, you can transpose into a Pirtz or modern type of defense with g6, or even sometimes get into a King's Indian. So interesting play from black here. And white can't know in advance how his opponent is going to complete the setup, so he has to play in some way that will work for all the different kinds of setups that black might go for. Knight c3, the move I played here, is the main move. In blitz, I've often played this move bishop to d3. If you've seen me play some blitz games, that's usually what I'll play in blitz. And the reason is the knight on c3, well, it's blocking the c-pawn. Sometimes I want to put the c-pawn in the center, and also sometimes it's subject to a little tactical attacks, like pushing the b-pawn forward and trying to undefend the e-pawn. So it requires a little more attention when you play this knight c3 move, but this is the main move here. It's probably the best move. The knight is not immediately coming under any pressure. Notice that the bishop can't come out and pin it right away. So this is the best move here. You just have to stay alert when you play this way. And my opponent here plays knight bd7, which I have not seen in this exact position before, but it's a way of continuing with that flexible kind of setup. He still can think about going with g6, but this sort of hints that he's going for e5. I mean, this knight here is in a way preparing e5 and going for a Neo-Philidor. I guess black could also think about c5 in this position. So I was thinking about still allowing for the possibility they might be going for a Pirtz and keeping the option of playing f4 open. So I was looking for a move other than knight f3. Knight f3 is certainly one of the main moves here. In fact, the main line in the book from here goes knight f3, e5, bishop c4. And this is a standard position in the Philidor. I think this is the Hannum variation in the Philidor defense. So that would be a very standard Philidor and a typical way to play. But of course, after knight f3, he's not required to play e5. He could still go for one of these Pirch setups. And in those setups, I would really prefer to have the f-pawn out in front of the knight. Now, it turns out, I didn't really think of this. I thought about this a little bit. It turns out I really can play f4 immediately. I was thinking I would rather get one step closer to castling before playing f4, just in case the king has to get off this diagonal quickly. It'll take black a couple of moves to open up this diagonal for his queen, but on the other hand, it'll take me a couple of moves to get the pieces out of the way so I can castle. So I wasn't ready to play f4 just yet. But f4 is a playable move here. It was the second choice in the opening book. And if black continues with e5, which is actually the main line here, it might go like this: knight here, pawn takes, queen takes. And this looks like a decent position for white as well. So I really could have just gone f4 if that was my intent. And it works even against the Philidor types of setups. So anyway, I was playing this kind of waiting move with bishop to e2. And he went with e5 right away. So we're into the Philidor, so now I don't mind playing knight f3. And this is a line in the Philidor, but normally the bishop would be on c4 rather than on e2. So it's not the best line against the Philidor, but still okay for white. White still has that edge from the opening, having a little more space in the center. And let's see, he goes bishop e7. Yeah, black is just slightly cramped. I castle. He goes c6, and I go rook e1. And at this point, we're out of the opening book. The opening book actually goes kind of an interesting way. It's a4, which in a way, well, if you think of what happened in the game, you'll see what happened in the game. A4, you know, is a pretty interesting way to wait and see if black is going to castle or not. Because in the game, he chose not to castle, but the main continuation after a4 is castling. And a4 is a useful move as well because it stops this b5, b4 plan. So it's useful in its own right, you know, maybe gaining some space on the queen side, preventing him from chasing your pieces, and also just delaying and waiting to see if black is going to castle. Then rook e1 and queen c7. And this seems to be an okay position for both sides with slight edge to white. Anyway, I went rook e1 right away. I still had in the back of my mind he might try and harass this knight with the b-pawn, and I wanted to be prepared to defend my e-pawn with the rook in case I have to move this knight away. He went queen c7, and now I was kind of looking for ideas here. I suppose a4 would once again transpose if he castled into the previous line. I didn't really think about that. What I was thinking was maybe the center is a little bit fragile. Sometimes, you know, it's an idea just to pile up pressure on the center when you have this kind of tension. And so I was looking for ways to do that, and I came up with this b3 move, which, you know, it's not the most typical move here, but it seems to be okay. It seems to still be all right for white. And then he played the knight maneuver, knight to f8. So he's obviously repositioning the knight over on the king side. I went bishop b2, and he went h6. And this move h6 is actually a mistake. You know, it is. You do have to wonder in cases like this, and black has played so many slow moves, if there's a problem. You know, that white has castled and has got all of his pieces actively developed. You know, it has the feeling of the kind of position where there might be a tactic. And in fact, there is. I searched for it during the game and I did not find it. Now we're going to return. The same tactic will occur in a couple of moves. So I don't want to give the tactic away just yet. I'll continue in the game. So in the game, I didn't spot this tactic, and I just played the move h3. I was looking for it, but I couldn't find it. And what I was thinking with h3 was I probably want to move this bishop away so I can bring the knight over. And I didn't want a pin happening here. So I was just trying to stop that pin. And then my opponent plays the very provocative move g5. So this is where the tactic recurs. And it's also, you know, I searched for a tactic in this position as well. but I just couldn't find it. But it's the kind of position that should really scream out for you that black has done something wrong, and there ought to be some way to exploit that. All my pieces are developed in a reasonably coordinated fashion, whereas black has not castled. This rook, the rook over here is not able to get in the game, and the king is still in the center, and he's opening things up. That's just usually a recipe for disaster. Let's see. So I'm going to go ahead 2 more moves because I start off okay. Obviously it's got to have something to do with this fragile position in the center. So I'll do this as a tactics quiz in 2 parts. So I'll pause here and see if you can just spot the tactic now. It's white to move, and see if you can find the best move for white. Okay, pause the video if you want some time to think about it. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to give away the first 2 moves of the tactic and then see if you can find it. I'm going to give you a couple of hints, maybe just give you a second shot at the tactic if you didn't find it already. So the basic idea, which I hope a lot of you spotted, is to take on e5 with the knight, drag the queen out, and then exploit this discovered attack on the queen from the bishop there. And that's what I couldn't find. I mean, I have this position on the board, and I was thinking about it, but I couldn't find how to best exploit that discovered attack. I mean, the hints I'm giving you are that, well, it's a problem because the bishop is loose, but black has a problem because of the fact that he hasn't castled and his king is still in the center. So those are your hints. And if you want to pause the video at this point, see if you can figure out the rest of the tactic after knight takes, queen takes. Okay, I'm going to give the complete answer away now. Yeah, I need to take that pawn, drag the queen here where it's exposed to an attack from the bishop, and then play knight to d5. And well, this is an idea that's not so easy to see, but well, it wasn't easy for me. I hope some of you managed to find it. If the queen takes the bishop, that is checkmate. It's not about the typical knight c7 fork. It's an actual mate because the king has no squares. And so that is the deadly threat that I didn't spot. So knight d5 comes with this threat of mate if the queen doesn't keep hold of the c7 square. And well, where can the queen go? Let's see, I looked at this in the previous position, but I think the same logic applies here. I'll give an example. Say the queen goes to d6, just getting out of the way of the bishop and holding on to the c7 square so there's no mate. Then bishop to a3 hits the queen again and also targets this bishop here. So if the queen drops back to c7, then you can just take, or drops back, I guess it would have to go all the way back to b8, then you can just grab the bishop here and you get your piece back and the king is all exposed. So you have a great attack. So that's winning. And if he blocks like that, that's probably the best try. Then you can counter with e5, once again relying on the fact that the queen has to stay in touch with c7. Well, queen takes pawn. Oh, queen takes pawn. You've got bishop b5 check, picking up the queen. It's just a nightmare situation where because he never castled and never completed his development, things just fall apart. Anyway, and if the queen moves, then if you have nothing else, at least you can take the bishop here and then take the knight with the pawn. So that's getting your material back once again and continuing the attack. So anyway, that's good enough to consider that a win. And the funny thing is, if you don't find that tactic, then this position, which was good for white all along, white had that opening advantage and never really gave it up. If you don't find that tactic with knight takes e5, then every other move is good for black. So just like that, one missed tactic, and the situation changes, and now black has a good position. He's got this attack going, and sometimes it happens that it's still true that he hasn't castled and his king has no squares, but but I'm not in a position to exploit it. You know, sometimes it's true that if you get a quick attack, even against those opening principles that we all like to talk about, you get enough pressure with the attack to allow you to complete development. And so that's the case here. This is a good attack for black all of a sudden. And black is just a little bit better. Let's see. After knight h2, he went h5. Yeah, this is my idea. Is you know, if he pushed on with g4, you know, I can just take that. I've got the bishop, the knight, and the queen on that square, and he's just got the bishop and the knight. So I can hold on to that square without having to open up any lines on the king against the king. I just am trying to avoid opening lines. And you know, if he doesn't push the h-pawn forward, I'll probably play knight to g4 there and just start trading stuff off, and his attack will dissipate. So he plays the best move. He plays h5. That keeps control of this square, and once again he's threatening to push that pawn forward and open up some lines. Although right now in this position, if he plays, if he were to play g4, I would play h4 and keep the lines closed. So I'm still okay, and I'm just trying to find moves. Let's see, I went with queen to d2, connecting my rooks and taking a look at the g-pawn, although it's probably too dangerous to take that because, yeah, he's got rook to g8 and the bishop defending the knight, looking at my queen. It looks pretty risky to actually grab that pawn, so I don't think I'm really threatening to take it, but I'm just trying to keep my queen in position to play an active role in defense and also get it off the back rank so my rooks are connected. But well, the only move that keeps white even, actually, is this move knight back to f3, reintroducing this knight takes e5 tactic. So without that tactic, white is just worse. So anyway, I played queen d2. He went knight g6, and his attack is pretty easy to play as long as I haven't got any counter pressure on his king. Let's see, I went bishop to f1. You know, I'm still thinking, yeah, I probably should have played something other than bishop to f1. But, oh yeah, here's the problem. I want to play g3 here so that whichever pawn he pushes forward, I can push the other pawn forward and that way keep the lines closed around my king, and that would be a decent defense. But I can't push g3 because the h-pawn is hanging. So I played this move bishop f1 to defend the h-pawn, allow me to play g3. It also opens up some lines for the rook and the queen. He goes on with g4 anyway, and in this position I can't play h4 because his knight, when he played knight g6, he took away that option. So I never got a chance to get in those pawn moves that would allow me to keep things closed around my king. So yeah, I had to find a move here. It was tough. And the move I found, it's, you know, one of those moves. In all cases, black is a little bit better. This holds on fairly well, I guess, but he can open lines. There was no way to prevent black from opening up some lines. So he took, and I took. And just the idea is here, the queen is out of the way and is lending some support along this third rank for the pawn, which he might pile up on. And the second idea was I wanted to play knight e2. If we back up to this position, I wanted to play knight e2 right away, but that actually drops the e-pawn. That was one of the problems I had here, and I came up with this queen e3 move so that I could get in knight e2, so this knight can come over and defend, and also maybe prevent him from lodging his knight on f4. But now, you know, he's just a little bit faster here. I take, he takes, and he goes knight f4. Actually, the strongest move here, and the one that keeps the biggest advantage for black, is suggested by the chess engine, is bishop to b4. Bring the bishop out to pin this knight. Yeah, it's a little counterintuitive, but yeah, it makes it harder for me to get this knight over to defend. Let's see. I can now play knight f3 pretty safely, at least bring this knight over to defend. It's no longer getting harassed by a g-pawn. Let's see, queen over to e7 and queen to g5. And anyway, there's a long line here. This still looks very dangerous. He's got rook g8. I have to get the king out of the way. And bishop to d7, preparing to castle, rook to d1, and castle queenside. And, you know, black has solved his development problems. This is this is what I mean by black. Once he's gotten through that critical stage where I missed a tactic, he uses his attack to justify his play in a way, and he manages to complete development, get castled, and he's still got the attack going. So the engine gives a +1 advantage to black in that line. Of course, people don't play the most engine optimal moves all the time anyway, and this is a good move. This keeps the advantage to black. It's piling up on the H-pawn, so he's got 2 pieces attacking it, and it's just generally making a nuisance of itself. And but now I can play my move, the knight e2 move that I wanted to play. He gets this check, chases my king to h1, and then plays bishop to e6. And in this position, actually I'd been thinking about this tactic for a while. I spotted another tactic. This time it's my turn, and I spotted the tactic and played it. So there's another chance for you to play Tactics Whiz. Can you spot the tactic that I was thinking about, and should I play it? It's another 2-part question. So if you want to pause the video here, see if you can spot the tactic that I was thinking about, and see if you can figure out if it was a good idea for me to play it or not. Okay, I'm going to give the answer away now. The tactic I spotted was bishop to e5, with the idea that if the queen takes, I can grab this knight. So I just win a pawn, the question is that really a good tactic? Now the chess engine does not like that tactic, I have to tell you. And it thinks I should just play moves like knight to f3. That's a good move, or rook to d1, trying to slow down his castling. So both of those are good, solid moves. And knight f3 is definitely a move I'd been thinking about in this position. Just increasing the pressure on that e5 pawn, not going for any fancy tactic. And the game would continue with an edge to black. I mean, it's still a tough position for white. But after bishop to e5, black has a way to refute this. And so if you want to see if you can figure out what's black's best move here. Okay, pause the video if you want some time to think about it. I'm going to give the answer away now. Black's best move is to accept the tactic. He says, yeah, so what? Just take the bishop. And let's see, didn't I explore that? Yeah, I did. He just takes there. Yeah, so this is an example of sometimes it's best not to, when your opponent plays a tactic and you spot it, sometimes, there's something about the tactic that you can discover that is that your opponent may have missed. So you don't always want to avoid your opponent's tactics. Sometimes you want to accept those tactics and say, yeah, show me. So, I have 2 ways to take this knight, and I need to take that knight back in order to justify this tactic and hopefully be a pawn up. But if I take with the knight, he has the move bishop to d6, and this battery is winning, right? He wins the pawn back. I mean, he wins a piece, basically, because I can't move that knight. There's a mate hanging over here on h2. And we're just even in pieces, right? I just got my piece back. I sacked a piece, got it back, and now he's going to win the piece again, so he will stay a piece up in this line. So that means the only way that I can take that knight back is to play queen takes f4. And now let's see, the best way for black to continue is to take the e-pawn with check, and then if there's this exchange where I take, that was my natural inclination would have been to take if he had played this way. Then he can take the knight, and this has got a really nasty threat. Once again, the king has no squares. Very similar to the mate threat that I had against his king. Knight takes f2 is just a killer threat. And there's no way to defend f2. There's no piece that can defend it. So I have to play a move like bishop to g2. And, well, he can play this check anyway and force my king into the line of fire here. And, well, this turns out to be a winning attack for black. So let's see, after queen takes, e4. Yeah, so after queen takes e4 check, I can't even trade off queens and hope to reduce the attack that way. I have to play knight f3 to block the check, and then he can just castle queenside. Once again, another example of how the pressure of the attack is used to justify his lack of development. He manages to castle and bring his remaining pieces into the game, and you know, his attack continues from here. The material is equal, but well, the c pawn is hanging. I think he picks up the c pawn, and there's a lot of threats here on the g file. I'm in a lot of trouble here. So so that's what he should have played. He should have accepted my tactic. I played this tactic thinking that would, you know, what I was thinking in addition is that I needed to get all my pieces into the game. You know, so this bishop over here on b2 was not really contributing to the defense, and so I thought, well, if I can at least eliminate one of his attacking pieces, for my piece was sitting over here, that would be an improvement. But well, not in this case. It's not an improvement. But he kind of believed me. He didn't go for that tactic, and he searched for another move, and he played a move that really shocked me when I saw it, because I thought it was not playable. He played knight takes e2. And it was only in this position that I realized knight takes e2 comes with this huge threat of mate. I thought, you know, if he moves the knight, I was just going to take his queen, but I can't take his queen. My bishop is hanging, and there's a mate threat. So one more tactics quiz for you. This, you know, I nearly resigned at this point. Honestly, I was so shocked by that move, and a move like that. You know, after I was thinking I was finally getting rid of my difficulties by tactical means, the position was starting to, I thought, improve for me. He comes up with this knight takes e2 with a combination of the mate threat saving his queen. But there is one move that white has that saves the game, and I eventually found it by, you know, it's actually hard to find it in a logical way in this particular case for me, because you know, because of the my mental state at the time. You know, after you've got this tactic you think is okay, and then your opponent comes up with a shocking move you hadn't foreseen. It disrupts your thinking somehow, and so it took me a long time to find the answer. I hope you guys can find it sooner. And the way I found it was I just said, well, let's just go through this. I don't want to, you know, I have time here. Let's just go through this, look at every single move and see if there's anything that saves the position for me. And I eventually found, and there is just one move. So see if you can find the one move that saves white here. Okay, yeah, pause the video if you want time to think about it. I'm going to give the answer away. The only move that saves is knight to f3. And yeah, it's a nice move. It does two things. It stops the mate threat, and it defends the bishop. So my bishop is no longer hanging. So his knight is hanging, his queen is hanging, and I eventually will get my piece back. He finds the best move here. He plays queen to c8, and I take on e2, and he takes on h3. So I did not end up winning a pawn anyway, but well, I have survived. I guess that's what we can say. The material is even. He still hasn't castled, so that's what I'm looking forward to, trying to prevent him from castling. And but he still has all these threats against my king, so still a very difficult position for me. And I was especially worried about this knight hopping in here to g4 and you know, introducing more threats. So I just took the knight off at this point. I saw bishop takes, and then I could play e5. And I also saw that after bishop takes, he didn't have any intermediate moves, like the queen move here did not work out for him. Didn't provide a win. So so this is playable. The chess engine prefers the move knight to d4 as the best way to continue, and I guess this position would be rated about even somehow. Kind of funny. These really complicated positions, and the chess engine says it's even. So I took here, and yeah, you know, I had to, before taking there, I had to calculate if this queen move here was going to be deadly, but it turns out that doesn't seem to do much. Doesn't introduce any mate threats that I can't deal with. When he takes the bishop, my plan is to take back with the queen and keep these squares covered so he can't come in. And the knight here is covering some of these squares, so the queen can't check along that file. So anyway, it just sort of holds together. So he examined this position for a long time and finally just took back, which is correct. And then I push on with e5. I had to do that for the tempo. He was attacking my rook here, and yeah, maybe I could have played rook d1 immediately. Anyway, he went bishop back to e7, and let's see. I could have played knight a rook d1 here, perhaps. I was more concerned about kind of unwinding my pieces a little bit. They're still funny looking. There's still funny looking tactics over here. So knight to h2 helps control these squares so his queen can't easily hop back over to the g file. And so he went queen to f5, and I got in rook a to d1. So I'm finally starting to breathe a sigh of relief here. Let's see, what's the material? Yeah, the material is still even, but I've organized my forces around the king a little bit, and it's not so easy for him to castle now. So, but there's still he still has this dangerous attack. He goes bishop to c5, poking at this weakness here, and I go rook to d3, taking a look at his bishop and hoping to force some action. And I overlooked a threat here. So rook to d3 is another mistake. So, but, okay, well, rook d3. We're getting close to the end here, actually. Rook to d3 is the move I played, and there is a winning move here for black once again. So see if you can spot the idea for black. How does black win? And yeah, pause the video if you want some time to think about it. Okay, I'm going to start giving away the answer. I'm going to first show what he played and how the game ended, and then we'll come back to this position and we'll see if you can then spot the tactic that actually wins. The move he played is bishop takes f2. And, I thought at first this wasn't playable because, well, his bishop is hanging, and, I was just going to take that bishop with the rook, and if he takes my rook, it's, I'm getting two pieces for the rook. So that's helping me, at least that's what I thought. And then I saw bishop here threatens mate once again. His mate threat that keeps going. But fortunately, I have a move, and it's the final move of the game. So if you want to see if you can find the defense for white here that actually wins. Okay, you can pause the video here if you want time to think about it. I'm giving the answer away. It's I can take with the bishop. Bishop takes h3, and this simultaneously defends against the mate threat and attacks the queen. And he can't actually even save this bishop because, well, the queen comes here to try and hold on to the bishop, and I have rook here, which will fork the queen and the bishop. So I'm up like a rook and a piece, and finally on my way to winning. So he just resigned here. But, well, let's back up to that critical moment where I played rook to d3, ignoring this weakness on f2. Can you spot the idea now? How does what's the winning idea for black here? Okay, pause the video. It's your last chance. I'm going to give the answer away now. He could have played queen takes f2, and after the queen trade, which is forced, by the way, because once again he's threatening mate here with the queen and the rook, so I really have to deal with that. Then he has bishop f2, and now there's nothing to save me here. If I take the bishop, the problem in the other line was that his queen was hanging after I took the bishop. In this line he's traded queens, so if I take the bishop, he takes my rook, and he's just up material. and if I don't take the bishop, then once again he's got this this mate. So this is winning. Well, black is winning by by having more material, having a material advantage at that point, and should go on to win in the end game. So that was his last chance to win the game, and instead he went bishop f2 first, and I went bishop takes h3, and that's how the game ended. So anyway, I finally scored my first win, and you can see how tough it's been for me. I see some tactics and I miss others, but it was an interesting game. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will see you again soon.